effectively. So we did email out a new link. We're going to be talking about Microsoft Teams and how we can use that with Scouts, particularly in the online environment, as we're all sort of forced to be stuck at home rather than at the hall. And hopefully you guys can get something out of this in terms of how to set up your virtual Scout hall and the best way to do things to make things easier for you guys in the long run, but also to make it as seamless as possible for your youth members and for your other leaders involved. Hello everyone, I'm Lewis Todd, RC Joey Scouts for Hunter and Coastal Region, for those of you that don't know me. And today with us we have a special attendee, David Jacobs. So he sits on the state team at the moment, but today he's here in his industry capacity as a provisioner of Microsoft Teams for different organisations around the country, both business and non-profit.
Thanks, Lewis. Yeah, there's a few technical problems here. I mean, we were talking about this earlier the other day when we were getting ready for this session, and unfortunately, it doesn't matter how technically minded you are, you're at the mercy of NBN connections and 4G, etc., etc. But
so we've got a few things that we're going to run through today in terms of different topics. So the basics: what is Teams? How does it work? What's it going to do for you? How to set up your team, particularly in the scouting context, so how we can make it work the best way possible for your group. And then once we've got things set up, how do you add people in, both members and guests, creating channels as well. So that's going to be part of our setting up the teams discussion. And then how do we schedule a meeting and run it easily and effectively so it's stress-free for all of it, for everyone involved. So Dave, do you want to take over and start talking about the basics and how it's going to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks very much. So as you can see here, I think it's probably important to probably start from the start. So I've just got up here a Microsoft Teams dialogue or application. But some people might say, well, how do we get there to begin with? So what I might do is bring up a web browser. And as you can see here, I'm going to type in portal.office.com and hit enter. Now that's going to ask me to log on. So you log in with your username and password that's been given to you by the state office. And in the email that we sent out to everybody, if you're unable to get your username and password from the state office, Lewis, do you remember what that email address is for support? It's info or something?
I think it's info at newsouthwales.scouts.com.au. But when we put the recordings up on the region website, we'll have a link there for you guys to get the email address straight away.
Yeah, perfect. So if you are unable to log in, then just send an email to that email address and the state office will be able to help you out. When you log into portal.office.com, you'll get a whole heap of little applications like this or something that looks very similar. You might not have things like admin, but there'll be your basic Outlook, OneDrive, Word, Excel. Today, what we're going to talk about is Teams. So if you click on Teams, you'll see here that it's actually launching Microsoft Teams in a web browser. And you'll see here that in my team, you can see the AusVenture project, and today we're going to really be talking about the example hall. You might notice just down here, this little icon, download desktop app, and that gives you the ability to download the application onto your laptop, desktop computer or Mac. It's also noteworthy that if you've got a mobile device, so that's a mobile phone, a tablet supporting iOS and Android, you can go to your various app stores and download the Teams app as well. So depending on your preference, there's no limitation of functionality. You can either go in through your web browser or through the app. Now today, both Lewis and I will be demonstrating using the app for most of today. So I might just minimise that now. And as you can see here, the interface looks exactly the same. So I'll just take you through very, very quickly if you've never used Teams before. Here's your activity feed. The activity feed really just brings you a chronological order of what's been happening in your teams and channels. This will make sense as we go through the tutorial today. For me, I use Teams all the time. Typically speaking, I don't spend a lot of time in activity, but it's for those people that are concerned they might have missed something, some activity in their teams or channels. Everything will come here in chronological order. The next part's your chat. Now, as you can see here, this live event is coming up in bold, so I won't click on that. Lewis and I have been talking to each other, and again, all of my chats in chronological order. Over here at the top, you've got recent and then contacts. Now, it's important to note your contacts will probably come up blank if you've never used this before. Now, in an organisation such as Scouts, when we manage to bring everybody on board, there'd be 17 to 20,000 people in the organisation. So that's the reason why it doesn't automatically populate. So what you can do is create your own group. So you just go down to the bottom here, create a new contact group, and I'm going to call this My Scout Group. I'm going to create that here, and you can see here, My Scout Group has just appeared. On the three little dots, you click on the three dots, and I'm going to add a contact to this group. Now, in My Scout Group, I'm going to have Lewis. Now, it takes 3 letters to start coming up, so Lewis Todd, here we go. I'm going to add that. And Lewis is now in My Scout Group. You can see here he's red, which means he's in a call or busy. When you put your mouse over the top of that contact, you see 3 little dots that come up and says more options. If you click on that, I can either remove Lewis from the group or notify when I'm available. This is good, I think, from like a professional sense. We use this all the time at work. But if you've got, say, if you're a group leader and you want to know when your leaders within the group are available, clicking this notify available means that when Lewis is available to talk to me, it will pop up in the bottom right-hand corner of my computer screen to let me know that Lewis is available to chat. As you can see in the chat against Lewis, we've got a chat that's going. If we've been sharing files directly, it will appear here. Obviously, we haven't been. The organisation hasn't been filled out for Scouts Australia, and we can share some other applications which we can go into a little bit later on. Now, I won't click on these buttons because we're in the middle of a call and in this demonstration at the moment, but I can do a direct video call, a direct audio call, and I can also share my screen, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. And this is good for sharing presentations, or I can actually give control of my screen to Lewis so he can give me some help, tech support and that sort of stuff as well. So that's what can happen in here. Now, I guess a bit of a caution. At the moment, there are no youth members that have been issued a newsouthwales.scouts.com email address. But just keep in mind the 2D leadership side of things when that does happen around the direct calling and video call. In the Scouts New South Wales tenant, it will actually come up as Lewis Todd leader. And that way you'll know you'll be chatting to a leader or a youth member. So that's the chat area there. And just that little icon there, if I'm doing a one-on-one chat with Lewis and I want to create or add another person, I just click on that and that then becomes a 3 or a 4-way chat. So you might be chatting to one of your leaders directly and want to bring in another leader into that conversation. You can do so just by clicking on that little icon and adding people. The next one down is Teams. Now this is a bit of terminology. This is called a team. So you can see here I'm part of 2 teams, the Oz Venture project team, and today we're going to be talking about the Scout Hall. Now you might notice that the example Scout group is not bold, but the Oz Venture project is. And the reason for that is if I just expand this out, I can see now it's just gone non-bold, I can see that child safety, finance, project management and marketing are bold. And what that means is there's a change that's happened that I haven't been aware of. So if I click into the example Scout group, we can see here that everything else is normal except for Scouts. So if I click on Scouts, I can see that a weekly program has been added. So now it comes out of bold to normal. So that means I've been notified of the change and I can see what's happened. So that's really useful, especially for group leaders, that you can see what's happening in the group. And if things have happened within teams, it will come up as bold. So you know that you can jump into that channel. These are called channels. You can jump into that channel and have a look at what the change is. The change will always happen in the post. So if you're adding files or a weekly program, etc., and we'll jump into that a little bit later on. That's just your basic orientation of this interface. And I believe Lewis a little bit later on is going to show you how to set up your channels to replicate your virtual Scout group and how to add people to that. Your next one down is your calendar. And as you can see here, my calendar is a little bit light on compared to my work one, which is good. But you can see here that this is dark blue and light blue. The difference between that is you can see that the dark blue one has a little video icon, and a dark blue meeting in the Teams calendar means that something is running at that time. The light blue one means that no one is in that meeting or it's not currently on. In this interface here, you can do a meet now straight away, or you can schedule a meeting. So I might just click on that. Test. I'm going to, you can add your attendees. So Lewis, that comes up, and we'll go through all these little settings a little bit later on. But you can see here, for those people who've used Outlook, it's pretty familiar. Just might close that and discard the changes. The other thing as well is that some people might notice you just that little drop down. I can do a live event. As I said before, we're not going to go into the live events today, but the live event is this style of meeting. We've also got a calls dialogue. Now you can remember back to the chat, I had a favourites group and I created the My Scout group and I added Lewis to that. So it's the same contacts database. I can see Lewis is in a call at the moment, so it'd be quite pointless for me to call that contact or video call. But this is quite nice and handy to be able to jump into this dialogue here and see who's available. They'll come up green. So let me just scroll through. I can see Xander, the Director of Marketing for Ozventure. He's available. So if I clicked and called, he presumably should be available. Those that the little icon that says away, it means that their computer's on and logged in, but they're not actually sitting in front of their computer at the time. So that's the dialog box there. And finally, we'll finish up with files. And these are the files in chronological order that have been accessed within my Teams. Again, we'll go into files in a little bit more detail. So that's, I guess, the high-level overview of Microsoft Teams. But what we might do is, Lewis, you're going to talk about, I guess, how to set up Microsoft Teams and the channels and how the groups will go, yeah?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the best way to set it up so that you guys as group leaders or as leaders constantly aren't adding extra people in or moving them around. And so in a second, you should pop up my screen and you'll be able to see everything that is happening. So just loading things for you now. So we can now see. Yep. So we can now see example Scout group. Awesome. So this is our team or our virtual hall as State set up for us. And then if we're an owner of the team, so that means we can modify and make changes, we'll be able to click on these three dots and then go in and manage the team. From there, we've got all these different options. So we can see in our first example Scout group that David and I are both owners and then we have 0 members and guests. And this is how you guys will have inherited your hall when it was first up. You'll probably have yourself as the GL, and then I'll probably be in there as well, so that if you guys need any assistance, I can help out where needed. From there, we can then view our channels. So again, by default, everyone will only have general. They won't have all the other sectional channels as well. So first example, Scout Group, we'll talk about making a channel. So for you guys to set them up, what we need to do is we need to go add channel, and then we need to start typing our stuff in. Now, it's always best to put a number in front of our channel. So for us, you can see here that we've given Joey's a 1, Cub a 2, Scouts a 3, etc. Because otherwise the channels are all automatically put in alphabetical order, and it just makes it a little bit easier from a user perspective that they can see where everything is.
So Lewis, if my group doesn't have a Joey section or a Rover section, should I just start at one with Cubs, or should I create the Joey team? What's the advice there?
Look, if you guys don't have a Joey or a Rover section, I'd probably still set the number aside, just in case one day you might have a section in there. And then it makes it a little bit easier as well if you need help from someone, that all the channel numbering and naming will be consistent. So, you know, if you say my Cub pack isn't showing up for whatever reason, then a system, someone who can help will then be able to know to go straight to channel number 2 and then have a look at channel number 2. And it might be as simple as ticking this box down the left here, down the right, sorry. And so if we tick this box, it makes sure that the channel always shows up under the group, under the teams. So when your youth members get added in, or your other leaders, it's visible for everyone. So it keeps it nice and open so that everyone can see.
Yeah, perfect.
So first example, Scout Group has grown recently, and we need to create a new channel because they've now got 2 Scout units running. So to do that, it's pretty simple. All we need to do is hit add channel, and then we'll type in our second Scout Group, and we're going to call this one 3B or 3.1, and that'll keep it nice and easy so that they'll still fall in order. And this will be unit 2, and we want the privacy. Now, privacy is very important. So to set when we're setting up pretty much everything, we want everything to be standard, which is accessible to everyone into the team. Because once you're in the hall or in the team, we want you to be able to see everything. There's no need to hide different sections from each other. Yeah, it just gets more complicated because as a group administrator later, you'll have to add people and remove them from the channel. Whereas if it's just public, once they're in, and it'll keep it nice and simple. And then we want to tick this box down the bottom so that everyone can see it, and it's shown on the side there.
I think just on that point, I think it's really important, especially when you're on the youth program or new youth program, as some people are still calling it, being able to have those cross-sectional project patrols. So keeping your youth-orientated channels open or as standard just makes that a little bit easier to happen as well. So good point there, but I think we're going to go into private channels a little bit later on if we've got some concerned leaders around some privacy stuff. So let's add that channel.
Awesome. So we'll do that right now. Add, and we should be adding the channel. Awesome, and we're in. So we can see that 3.1 Scouts is there and it's ready to go. So like every other channel that we've set up, they're automatically set up with the post section where we can talk about our program or what's coming up, our file section, which is accumulation of everything that ever gets posted in there, and all these other tabs that David will talk about later, that as we get more into teams, or if we get more into teams in our particular group, we'll be able to use. Awesome. Okay, so what we'll now set up a private channel as well. So that's pretty straightforward. Again, so we'll go back to our hall. We'll go add channel, and then all we need to do is change the privacy tick box here, and then that'll create a new channel. For us as a group, there's probably not anything other than a group council section or a group committee section that we need as a private channel. purely because if it's involving the youth members, it should be open to everyone. Maybe for some of the larger groups, we might want to create an additional sectional council section for the leaders, for a space for them to get organised if we really need to, but that's probably only for the larger groups out there, because most groups will be able to do everything in their group council section.
So from a privacy perspective, the reason why you'd create a private channel is you'll notice there all your channels, as Lewis indicated, have a posts, files and wiki as by default. So any files that live in a private channel, say for example group committee or group council, those files can only be accessed to team members of that channel. So what might be useful there is things like, you know, your financials, group reports, all of those sorts of things that really should only be shared by your group committee and leaders of the group, that you don't want parents or youth members to have access to. Those private channels, one, won't be seen by anybody else. They'll only be seen by the people that you add to those private channels. And the files that you put into those private channels are only accessible by those people that you give access to, no one else. So that's a really, really important thing there, just to get your head around that. Files within, you know, Joey's, Cub Scouts, all your open channels, you know, they are accessible, which is what you want from a youth programming perspective. But we understand that there are certain sensitive types of documents that you'd only want restricted access to, and that's what you put into your private channels.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we don't want everything to be a private channel, particularly because when you're managing private channels, you have to then add members into the individual channels, and you can only do that once they're in the team. So it just adds an extra layer of complexity that we don't necessarily need in terms of shifting people between sections, and it just becomes unwieldy mess, so to speak. So if we can just keep it leaders and those that need to know, that'll cut down the admin for you guys. So once we've got our structure set up, we'll then need to add people into our hall. So as David was saying before, once we add them, they can see everything that they're invited to. So they'll see all these public channels, but they won't see the private channels unless we specifically add them to them. So if we start looking for our scouts, so we'll be able to see Cameron, he's one of our rovers, and we'll hit add, and it'll add him in. And by default, it'll add everyone as a member. So Cameron's in the system because he's a leader and he has an office account. So he'll be really easy to find and really easy to get in. And because he's a member, we're going to make him an owner as well, because that way he can help us out in managing the scout group. And we know that he needs to be able to access everything in every section.
So just very important there, the difference between if you make someone an owner, they can see everything. So you just got to be aware of that. So by default, I believe, Lewis, the group leader is an owner of the team. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So state office have set it up. So every group leader is an owner of the team. The DC is also an owner of the team, and I'm an owner of the team at this point in time as well, just to help you guys get set up where you need it.
Yeah, and then as you add people, they become members, and you might have someone who is trusted or a little bit savvy with IT that you might get to help out. You might want to make them an owner as well, but just remember they can see everything, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so it's probably one of those things that you probably only want to restrict to maybe one leader per section and the group leader, and then maybe the committee chair as well, so that they can help out in the group committee section.
Yeah.
So we've added in a member who has a New South Wales email account. Now we're going to add in a youth member that doesn't have a New South Wales email account. So that's going to be most of our youth members across the region. So let's just add in example.scout@hc.com.au. Awesome. And then we're going to add them as a guest. And they're a guest because they don't have an email account with newsouthwales.scouts.com.au on the end. So we'll hit add, And now here's where it gets really important. See this little pencil? We need to make sure we change their name to be whatever they actually are. So it could be Harry T, or it could be a family account if multiple people are using the same email address. And this is important to do at the start because once they're in, you can't change it again. So now when we hit add, they'll come in as Harry T rather than example.scout at hc.com, which gets really handy for when you get bigger groups or if you're using Teams in a longer term sense. It's hard to remember everyone's parents' email address that they might have created. And there's some pretty interesting ones out there.
Yeah, because it does just take the first whatever part in front of the Adafruit. So yeah, you just got to be mindful of that because there's some interesting email addresses out there, isn't there, Lewis?
Yeah. So look, we won't edit test.scout, and when we hit add, they just come in as test.scout. And if that isn't their first name or last name, it becomes a bit tiresome, and you can't change it later without removing them and then re-adding them. So,
did you want me to maybe have a look at scheduling a live event or an event within a channel for the groups and what that might look like?
Yeah. So let's have a look at how you would schedule, just say a weekly meeting. We'll keep it simple.
Yep, I'll do that right now for you. So if I go to Teams, and I know that Lewis has been doing some changes here, so you should be able to see that. Let me just share my screen now. And Teams. So we can see here, we're now over on my computer screen. So you can see that because I've got the AV 2021 project, whereas Lewis didn't. And you can see that 3.1 Scout Group is now available. So you can see that changes as he makes them, they happen live. And it comes through. So what I might do is go to the Ventura section. I've got a little bit of experience in that section. And we might go to the calendar, and Venturers meet on a Monday night. So I'm going to click new meeting and test. Test night. All right, so I'm going to add Lewis in. Now there's a couple of different thoughts around this. You can either add in all of your contacts, so everybody gets a meeting invite, or just the leaders, and send out the invite via email, Facebook Messenger, whatever platform. Because we do know that some groups have 50 or 60 youth members, and then you'd have to add 50 or 60 people into here, and that could be a little bit tiresome. Or they might only have 5 or 10 youth members, so it's quite easy to pop in the contacts there. So for this one, we're just going to add Lewis. I'm going to make that Monday the 4th, and we're going to meet at 1900 to go for an hour. Now, as you can see here, add a channel. And we're going to attach this to the Ventura channel. So you can see here, Hall, Venturers. Okay, now that's important because this meeting is now attached to the chat and that channel, so it will come up. There's no other things that you might want to pop in here, details for the meeting. You might want to pop in the agenda or the meeting plan. But for now, I'm just going to hit send. And if I go to next week, we can see here, here's my test Ventura night. Now I'm going to click on this. I'm going to jump into it. You can see here all the details are still there. But what's come up now is join Microsoft Teams meeting, and it's a link. So Lewis will have this invitation because I've sent it to him. But you might want to send this Teams meeting out on, a weekly newsletter, the link, Facebook Messenger or other social media platforms. So when people click on this link, they'll go into the meeting. One important thing to note that wasn't available when I created the meeting was, once it's created and I jump back into it, is these meeting options. Meeting options will come up in a web browser. So it's just launched a web browser. And as you can see here, there's a couple of very important options. So first one is, who can bypass the lobby? And by default is people in my organisation. Now, what this actually means is, who can bypass the lobby? People with a newsouthwales.scouts.com.au email address. So if you remember back to when Lewis was saying he was adding youth members as guests, they will always hit the lobby and the leader or someone within the meeting will need to accept them. And that's really important. We'll touch on that in a moment. The other important consideration is who can present, and you've got this everybody. You can change that to people in my organisation, specific people, or only me. Now, this is important because it gives you the ability to turn on and off who can mute, who can essentially boot people out of the meeting, all of those sorts of things. So by default, who can present? Everybody. So that means that anybody on the call can remove anybody else on the call, mute anybody on the call. So you might want to restrict that or have specific people.
Look, we could go specific people, or because leaders are the only ones at the moment that have these email addresses, we could just go people in my organisation, and then it'll automatically be restricted for you.
That's right. So the bypassing the lobby, and I think this is the important one. We touched on it very, very briefly. I'm just going to hit save. We touched on that very briefly before around the direct messaging, and that's the concept of 2 Deep leadership. Now, in an online environment, if you have the lobby and leaders can join without being admitted, right? So you've got your 2 leaders in your meeting. It means that if a youth member clicks on it whilst there's only potentially 1 leader in that meeting, the leader has the option not to admit them until another leader is in the meeting. Just because it's online doesn't mean that we shouldn't be following our 2 Deep leadership rules. If anything, it becomes a little bit more challenging, and we do need to observe that. So a way to do that is to make sure that you always have two adults in the meeting that you present, and using that lobby option, as the youth members join, you click to admit them into the lobby, which means that you can you're admitting them in. There's also another option whilst you're in a call to end the meeting completely. So usually when you, if I bring this up, you can see here, I'm still showing my screen, and there's Lewis. You can see the little 3 dots here, more actions. I can do some background effects and all of those sorts of things. When you are in a meeting, not a live meeting, you'll get an option that says end meeting now. So if you click on the 3 dots, click on the end meeting now, it'll actually hang up on everyone at once. So that means you as a leader know that you can start a meeting and let the youth members in once you've got 2 leaders there. It also means that you can end the meeting, and you knowing full well that all youth members and adults have left this virtual online meeting place. And that's going to help you observe those 2 Deep leadership rules. There's also the ability to record, but we won't get into that at the moment. What I'll demonstrate to you now is we created that meeting in the Teams, and the reason why I attached it to the channel, so we've got it under the team and in this channel, is that we can now see that there is a Test Venture Night meeting. That means that anybody associated with this channel, so all of those guest youth members that Lewis added, can now see that there's actually a scheduled meeting running there, which is really, really useful. Did you want me to go through some of the applications, Lewis, and maybe how that might help some groups on a group night?
Yeah, we might just jump into some of the questions that have already come through, so because they kind of relate to some of the stuff we've already been talking about. So we've had a question about channel creation and if you can change it from public to private once you've done it. Sadly, you can't. So you need to either delete the channel and start again, which is probably my recommendation, and then move everything, create the channel, move everything over, and then delete the channel and start again. And that way, you're doing it early before you get too much stuff in there. Just scrolling through the list. And we also have a question about if Scouts have a personal email account, can we use their school email? And David, that's a pretty interesting question, isn't it? In terms of our position from state office or Scouts being child safe.
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. So Microsoft Teams, we've really just talked about its meeting capabilities. So yeah, we've touched on the meeting capabilities, we've touched on files, those sorts of things. The power of Teams is, and we'll show this to you a little bit later on, is more around the files, the collaboration. So it's your single port of call for everything. You should be using your Scout email address for all Scout related things. And it really comes down to security. And you may have seen on the media probably 6 to 12 months ago, this thing called the notifiable data breach legislation. For us at AusVenture, I know that I've made it very, very clear to our team that anything that we do commercially must go through a Scout issued email address. And that just helps us manage the security side of things. For our youth members that are using their school email address that's already on, federated with Microsoft Teams, yeah, absolutely. I think it's just up to the individual on which is their preference around what email address they use. But if you've been issued with a @nsw.scouts.com.au email address, for this environment, you really should be using that email address for all Scouts related activities.
Cool. And that's all that we've got so far from the questions. But if you guys have anything more in the middle, you can click on there and pop in your question. And when David finishes his next little section on some stuff, we'll jump back to those questions and try and answer them before we wrap up. We are probably going to run a little bit over time today because of our little delay at the start. But hopefully you can bear with us for another 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, no worries. So what I'm going to do now is, just whilst I'm setting it up, we're just going to jump into Microsoft Teams again, and we'll jump into the team. Now, we've talked about using the little plus sign here. So each channel by default has a post, files, and wiki tab. So what you might do is you might, in the files section, because you've got guest access, you might have a folder for each youth member. So as you're doing activities at home, remote scouting, all of those sorts of things, if they want to upload photos and all of material, etc., it might be a good place to store that. It might be a good place to store programs and all of those sorts of things. But it means that anybody who's got access to this channel has access to those files. So just something to think about. But this is a really nice, secure place to store. And for each user, there's a terabyte of storage. So don't worry about, clogging up the storage space and all of that sort of stuff. There's plenty of storage online. And it means that, what we're uploading here, everybody can share. And as you can see, some people might not have copies of Office. I'll just create a Word document, and we've got the online. Everybody has access to the online versions of Word, Excel, etc., etc. And you can work on these documents together. So you might have a project patrol of youth members working on, a particular project or task, and they can work on these documents together. And certainly in preparation for this meeting, Lewis and I were working on the PowerPoint slide together. So you can see there, test. Now you'll notice that this little blue notation here means it's a new document. So anything that's new to you will come up with this little icon there. As soon as you clicked on it, it will go back to normal. The other thing that I would encourage you, if you've got a little, want to play around a little bit, when you add a tab, the other one is Planner. Planner's really useful.
So Dave, the Scouts have already started one of these. Do we want to jump in and have a look at theirs?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Scouts. I did notice that before. And looks like you've renamed your planner, because I can see the icon, to weekly program. So let's jump in.
And how do we do that? Just for those that want to rename it.
Yep. So what I might do is I'll create a new one, or let's have a look. You can just rename it there. So just with a down arrow, see that down arrow, tab options, and I can rename it.
Cool.
All right. So it looks like you've got in the Scout section, if I just jump out and jump back in, you've got your term program here by the looks of it, because you've got week 1, week 2. And I've got Cameron, who's doing opening parade. We've got some SIA planning, a patrol activity. You've got me down as a cooking activity. I hope everyone's got an iron gut. And Cameron's closing. So let's just jump into a task. I'll have a look at what I've got to do. We can assign start and end times, notes. I can assign a checklist to them. I'm probably going to upload my recipe here as an attachment, and that way everything's stored. So that looks, like a really, I would suggest for groups and section leaders, that's probably a really handy tool for our project patrols to start working on, developing the program at a weekly and a term level. If you do your start and end times and put your dates in there, it can come up as, you look at your charts and your schedules, so you can see what's happening on what night as well. So that's pretty handy. So that's pretty cool. And you've seen, Lewis, because you're also a Joey leader in a group. How are you seeing, things like Planner and Files and Teams being used in your particular group?
Yeah, so if we look at our Cub section, they're a larger section compared to our Joey section. So in Joey's, we've only got about 10 at the moment. Cubs have got 30-ish. They're using Planner, particularly while we're in this current period, to show off what they're doing. And we've got a few different tabs across the different challenge areas, and they're listing the different activities that they're doing while they're all in home isolation at the moment. And in there, they can upload photos and all that sort of stuff, and that's their way of keeping in touch, so that when we start off with our online meeting for each week, there's about 15 minutes for them to run through what they've all been up to and how they're going with things, so they can just get that one-on-one chat time, so to speak, or one-to-many, depending on how many are in your group. And we've got a few more questions that have come through, Dave, as well.
Yeah,
so do you want to address those, or do we want to come back to some of them?
Look, I'm just looking at them now, so just you'll have to excuse me. I'm switching between two computers here. I've got a question around G Suite. Allows us to set up mailing lists for Cubs, Scouts, Ventures, etc. And so mailing lists and those sorts of things. Look, at this stage, there is three people that work in the IT team at head office, I believe, or state office. And if we were to issue email addresses to absolutely everyone, that's about 20,000 email addresses. So there is a plan. I'm not too sure what the roadmap looks like. But certainly at this stage, leaders and I believe rovers are getting email addresses. We can, as Lewis demonstrated, add to your channels people that don't have the Scout issued email addresses, so personal email addresses, and that's fine. I guess all we're saying at this stage is if you're a leader in New South Wales, you have a Scout's email address, which enables you to have permissions around managing those channels. Use that Scout email address. And for all of your youth members, parents that might be on the group committee, etc., you're fine to use that personal email address and add them to the channel as Lewis demonstrated as a guest. And then over time, we can transition to Office 365 email addresses at a later stage. So it's a mammoth task, and yeah, you just got to, I guess, it's one of those things that just takes time.
Do you want to jump back to my screen, Dave, and I can show someone how we actually create an email list in their Outlook? So it's not in Teams, but it's still part of Office 365. But the only issue with this method is that it's only available to yourself. So say I was emailing all my Joey parents every week, I'd just be able to type in Joey parents, but my other Joey leaders wouldn't be able to have access to that one list. So it kind of helps if you're just the sole email, but if you need to share it, it's not that friendly.
All right. So whilst you're sharing your screen, Lewis, I've just got another question here. What if you get an error using Planner? Now, I sort of alluded to before that Microsoft has gone from 20 odd million users to 50 to 60 in a very short period of time. I guess the challenge there is that sometimes the features are a bit slow, so just try again. And Lewis, I think there was a bug for owners.
So there is a bug as well. So if you're the original team owner, you'll need to get in contact with State Office or ping me a message, and then they'll be able to sort that out for you as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an easy fix. It's just an annoying fix. So. We have to do that one individually.
Lewis, whilst you're creating that email group, do you just want to show how we share the meeting link as well? Just got a question around, do we share the meeting link via email, copy and paste? So might as well do that at the same time.
Yeah, cool. So we're now in Outlook. So remember how David opened up the portal at the start? We're now just in our Outlook section, and I've clicked down the bottom here and pulled myself into contacts. From there, I can click up the top and go new contact list, and we might just go, Joey's, and then we can start punching in all our different emails on who's going to be the list. And then from there, all I have to do is hit create. And then when I go to send an email, so I'll go back to my mail. Still loading. Didn't check what's in here. New message. And I'll just type Joey's. And there's my email group there. And if I hit expand, it'll show me everyone that's in that email group. So the two people that I've added in there. So we're ready to go. And what was the other, David?
Yeah, if you just want to jump back into Teams, that the meeting that we created in the Ventura section.
Yep. Can you see Teams?
Yep, and there's me.
Yep. Awesome. And so in Venturas, we go into the tab. We can click on View Meeting Details. So 3 dots. Again, 3 dots will always bring up more options. View Meeting Details. And then we just want to share that top bit, don't we, David?
Yeah, so basically the question was what do we share? So you just go right click, copy link.
Yep, and then we'll jump back into our email and we'll send it to Joey's because that's who we want to send it to. In this case, that's my group of youth members, and hi all, here's this week's link.
Now, of course, that's the email. You can also drop that on socials as well. So I know in our older sections, so if there's any rovers watching and Venturers, might use Facebook Messenger or Snapchat or something along those lines. If you drop that link in there, that will allow them to connect from their mobile device. So that's quite easy. I don't think we're getting too many new. Should we be blind copying the youth when we email them? I usually send email to the leaders with a BCC to the venturers. Good question. Mindful of that.
Particularly for larger groups, BCC is always best.
Yes.
Unless you're asking for them to share their ideas, but BCC is always best. And if you want to get their feedback on something, well, you can use Teams as the platform to do that now. So we can shift that discussion off email, particularly in larger groups. You know, you ask someone a question and you get 50,000 replies. It gets awfully unwieldy to manage at times. So you can have that discussion in Teams. Are you sharing? No,
I'm sharing you. Yep.
Sharing the screen. Cool. So in Joey's, maybe it's, you know, what do we want to do? What do we next term? And then everyone else can just reply to that thread with whatever they want to do. And it's all in there, and that way it's all contained in one location rather than having 5,000 emails going backwards and forwards between everyone. People can react to different things. So if David was to respond to that.
Just bear with me for a minute. I'm going to jump into my Teams. I can see Joey's here. It's come up black for my reply. I would.
David would love to cook. Excellent. And now we can react to that as well. So you can almost do like little mini voting on the ideas as they come in, as people can see how they're going and what they want to do with different things. So it's a good way to keep track of it rather than a lot of different emails flying around.
I do know that the State Office is running a series of Teams training courses. So you know, going into what we've covered today, but also live events and maybe some of the applications.
And then we also have this other link at the bottom here, and that takes you to the Microsoft official training. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff in there, but it can be a little bit overwhelming if you haven't used Teams before, because it's aimed at business and they may not have used the terminology that we've used today. But if you want to have a look at more, click on this link or write this link down.
I was just going to quickly bring up that Microsoft website. Just a quick start intro into Teams. So we actually covered that one today. We've covered setting up and customizing your team. Now, just keep in mind that State Office creates the teams and you have the authority to create the channels. So that we've covered off what's relevant in Scouts today. And then collaboration, working with message and post, uploading files. And as you can see, like if you click on them, they're videos and they're usually not too long. So a minute. So they're quite good like that.
Yeah, and it's just a quick, easy way if you guys need a refresher. Rather than sitting through the hour of us talking today, you can just jump in straight off this link and go to whatever you need. Now, sometimes there will be that Scout specific question and you might need to reach out, but for most things, and where pretty much David and I have done all our learning from prior to this, is all through this channel here. And it's just slowly piecing it all together.
Excellent. So as you can see, it's pretty, you know, really quickly. Oh, I've forgotten how to upload a file. I've forgotten how to, you know, make a phone call, those sorts of things. It's just a really quick 1 minute, 2 minute video and away you go. And there's so many resources online, which we'll continue to build. Yeah, that's also another resource to help. So it looks like a lot of people, there's no new questions coming through, just a few messages of thank you. So, you know, thanks very much for that. And hopefully you've found some value. Now, Lewis, if people are out there watching this video, they weren't attending the live session, or you know, you think of something later on down the track, what's the best way that people can get in contact and help? There's the state office email address, and there's also potentially some local or regional resources.
Yeah, so we've got every DC is also an owner in all the teams. So if you run into an issue, contact your DC and they've got the permission to be able to jump in there and help you out. So that's an option. And then I'm also there as well. But yeah, try your usual channels first. And then for the more advanced things, I'm more than happy to help, or for those people that I've already been talking to.
And of course, there's also that that state office email address, which we'll also send out as well.
Yeah, info@nsw.scouts.com.au.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it. And you know, if you need any more support, we're here to help and potentially run another one of these sessions. And of course, there's also the ones that are being run by Scouts New South Wales as well as a 4-part series. Thank you, and that's it for us today.
Bye, guys.